This session aims to share new options for internationalization through technology and educational innovation strategies. Additionally, it seeks to promote global learning and foster online internationalization opportunities in higher education institutions around the world.
Hello, we warmly welcome you to this session of the IFE Conference Talk program, organized by the Institute of the Future of Education at Tecnológico de Monterrey. I am Patricia Montaño, Director of International Innovation and Networks at the Vice Rectory for International Affairs at Tecnológico de Monterrey. It is a real pleasure to be with you today. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that you can send your comments and questions through the comment section of the Facebook page at ifeconference.tec.mx. We also like to take this opportunity to invite you to be part of the IFE Conference 2026, an experience featuring more than 500 activities, keynote and hybrid conferences, special events, and networking spaces focused on learning, collaboration, and innovation. During this session, a promotional code will appear that you can use when registering to receive a 20% discount on the in-person or virtual experience. This offer is valid until October 1st, so take advantage of it. The event will take place from January 27 to the 29th of 2026 at Tecnológico de Monterrey, Monterrey campus. We look forward to seeing you all there. And now we can start by presenting the topic, Global Learning Fireside Chat. And for this, we have the honor of the participation of Landry Noti, Director of Global Research and Academic Programs and Global Initiatives at UC San Diego. Thank you very much, Liz, for accepting our invitation and being here with us.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Liz is I would say, sometime or long time friend. We've done things together. So I've been following her track, and it will be a real pleasure to have this chat with you, because I know that you have a lot of experience and you're a very generous person on sharing those experiences. So let's start. Global learning is a term that has captured the interest of many people in universities without a real consensus of the full meaning, which is good because it creates some space for innovation, which I love, but it's also sometimes not that good because it might create a sense of unknown things, and people that are not that much into taking the chance of going to the unknown might feel that is dangerous. So I want your experience to precisely prove the contrary and show our audience how it is an enriching and an incredible new way of having a deeper relationship with all the partners that you already have, or a good excuse to find and go to look for partners to enjoy this format. We at Tech use it to describe a window of opportunity that we offer our students and our faculty to collaborate and to learn and with our partners. In your experience, Liz, how is this term understood in places that you've worked? Does it mean the same that for Tech in Monterrey?
No, actually, I wouldn't necessarily expect that it would. And I think this is one of the really interesting things about having moved through a couple of institutions now, is there are some threads that remain the same throughout all of the institutions that I'm looking at, and have been at. But for each of them, the definition depends, the specifics of the definition depend a little bit on the context of the institution itself. Mm-hmm. So ideas of collaboration, ideas of taking action, ideas of diverse perspectives. I think those things go across institutions, but the individual institution in implementing global learning is going to have to think about its own context. What does it mean to collaborate? How do we collaborate at our institution? How can we encourage our faculty or staff to show students ways of collaborating? How can we do that intentionally so that students are thinking about who they're collaborating with, the kinds of activities that they're taking care of? My first institution was actually an institution in Greece. I was there for many years. And I think we did what I would now call global learning without really knowing we were doing it. We were collaborating with people from other places and other disciplines. We were thinking about very specifically, how do we introduce students to different ways of seeing things, as we had during the time that I was there, very intentionally turned towards encompassing a much broader range of students, international students, into what was a very homogeneous country. So having to sort of think about, what does that mean? How do you make sure in your classroom you're thinking about different ways of looking at the world and can take action on it? It was when I came to the US, and I stepped into UC Davis, which is the first place that I collaborated with Tec de Monterrey, where I was introduced to definitions of global learning and really thinking, how do you put that down for the institution? And there were two definitions that I looked at. One is Hilary Landorf and Stephanie Doscher's definition of global learning, which is available on the aacu.org site, the Association of American Colleges and Universities website. And the other one was UC Davis had just put out their own definition of global learning. And they're not quite the same. They're just a little different from one another. But UC Davis had gone through about a 3-year process of consulting with faculty and staff and students to think about what global learning meant for the institution. UC San Diego doesn't have a definition yet. And one of the first things that we're going to try and do this year as we move into implementing, I hope, a more structured way of doing COIL at UC San Diego is going to be putting together a definition that works for UC San Diego and thinking about how is it the same as or different than these other established definitions, because I don't think it'll be exactly the same. I don't think the faculty and staff are going to see it as exactly the same.
Thank you. It is really interesting. And as I mentioned, it is very difficult to have one and only one definition. But the interesting thing, as you said, is how there is a base that stays regardless of the place that is incurring or is trying to put this into practice. Implementation versus challenges. That is a whole subject. And we have our chair. I can tell you that so far we still need to figure it out how to better use the resources that we have, because the demand has been growing and growing. So our challenge is right now not really into how we provoke these things inside, but how we can respond to the widest or the largest number of all the faculty and students that want to participate. So for us, right now, we have a very interesting challenge on the term of resources. I can imagine that in the universities you've worked, this implementation process have found different challenges. How was it in UC Davis?
I would say resource challenges is always going to be the case. And I think even coming into UC Davis, I had worked at an institution which was even less well-resourced prior to that. I was in Greece throughout the financial meltdown. And so trying to figure out how you were going to do things with minimal resources was part of what we had to think about. And I think one of the things that it taught me was, how do you structure the way in which you want to move forward so that the individual can move forward with something with, I know this is going to sound odd, the least amount of support possible, because where your biggest difficulty is going to lie is in, as you noted, within staff support. It's hard as you grow, as you scale up, to have staff mimic the growth as faculty start to realize the real potential of global learning. It's hard to structure that upward. So, and this is actually one of the things that we did with Tech de Monterey, was to really think about what does, and we did this with COIL specifically, with Global Classroom specifically, what are the administrative things that need to be thought about? How do you put together an administrative and package that allows for faculty or staff to be able to think about putting together COIL projects on their own campus? What are the main pieces of support that you need? So my initial experiences with COIL style practice was pre-Zoom with an IT department that said, well, you can do this, but we're not supporting you at all. So figure it out. If you have problems, those problems are your problems. They're not our problems. So you start to think about, what are the real basics of what you need to implement something that would have intentionality, that it would address an issue that is related to global learning, whether you're looking at global action, whether you're looking at global problem solving, whatever it is that you're looking at, what are the most basic things that you would need in order to put that together? And you use that as the basis of your process. And if you have more than that, that's icing on the cake. But you know, at least there's certain basic things that need to be put into place. And I think the other thing that I have learned to do is to try and create templates that people can use easily. Mm-hmm. How do you put something together with a template so that at least part of the process people can do on their own? And the interventions come at really key knotty points when you're trying to move forward.
Completely agree. That is also a discussion that we're having now with the team, because precisely what you mentioned is that because we want this to grow and to last and to continue as a natural way, included in all the different formats that our universities have for teaching, is that resources are really important. So you need to design from the very beginning, as you mentioned, with a full intention in place of how can we construct this with the minimum use of resources, but that it would last the longest time. And that's not an easy question. So far, what we found is that what we need to do is build capacity. Build capacity in the sense of making sure that every professor that starts with us in this project enhances or acquires the skills necessary for them to be as autonomous as possible.
Yeah.
Not only because it is a matter of resources, but also because the way this started, just by chance, the COVID got into the way, and then we realized that we need to have this in place anytime. Not because we want the COVID to happen again, but because we live in Mexico, as you live in California. This is a zone in the Pacific Rim prone to certain types of disasters, because just you need to have a skillful group of faculty members available and ready to move to any place to work here. And also because it gives them a new tool, a new platform where they can explore such an incredible new subjects and new formats. And that's what's been really, really enriching at Tech. We see what we started doing in our pilots back in 2018 compared to the results and the works and the end of collaborations that the professors show working in our virtual campus, using artificial intelligence, using all sorts of electronic tools, technological tools. That is not part of what we thought at the beginning. Our idea was a little bit more, I would say, less great. So it is incredible that giving them the chance to learn this method and to be with them in the process of owning these tools, they can create a completely different and wonderful new experiences for students. So, yeah.
I think you bring up a really important point for faculty, is that once the faculty have had the opportunity to participate in something that demonstrates that collaborative nature, whether it's through global classrooms, through a COIL experience, whether it's collaborating in a slightly different way with someone, I think they recognize the ways in which this expands what the students get out of it, but also what they get out of it. And so faculty become the people that can sort of spread the idea of how great this is, particularly if you've sort of set up a series of back-end resources for them to be able to refer to. And I think, and this is something we really hope we're going to be able to do at UC San Diego, getting faculty together as a peer learning cohort or a peer support cohort as they explore this new way of working together. I think there's a lot of desire for that kind of support, and to be able to find ways to move forward together on a particular campus. And so that's something I believe that now we had just started it at UC Davis, and it's something even pre-global learning, we're going to probably end up putting this together as we draw people together that are already doing these things at UC San Diego to look at how we move forward.
Yeah, it is an incredible chance, and we can start from so different reasons. At Tec de Monterrey, the very first time that we took back the Sonic Coil model and look at it in a different way was mainly motivated because our goals of internationalization are so high that we need to find new ways to make sure that students have the opportunity to have these international experiences. So for us, it was the need of bringing tech, bringing the world at tech. For those students that we knew for very different reasons, financial reason was one of the main, but it's not the only, and there are very interesting human reasons why the students cannot go abroad, that bringing to the classroom this sort of experience, look at us, it seemed to us like a very way of having this new format. And it turned out to be that it was a success. So far, it's been already something that professors still do, and they do it with an excellent motivation. But on the other part is that professors also found that there is a chance for them to be international or to expand the networks. For those that have been for too long in Mexico or that had a different experience, maybe not the chance to study in their PhDs or their graduate studies abroad, there are all sorts of reasons why some faculty members may not have an active network. And this is a really interesting way of igniting, starting a network of peers that will maybe be the new partner for you to do research, to publish, and to find just someone that at least is concerned about the same topics that you're concerned. Is that something that you see San Diego will be taking in?
Yeah, I do. And I think you brought up the COVID pandemic. I think that really was a game changer for a lot of not necessarily institutions, but I think a lot of students and faculty, was a recognition of the need to move beyond the physical borders of their own countries. And that we couldn't take for granted that movement would be physical movement, but it could be, it could work in other ways. And I think when we talk about what global learning is and the need for global learning, I think that gets back at one of the basic reasons why we need it. We need it because we now recognize that the world is not just my country. Greece was the same way. Greece was very homogeneous. It was very centered. Kids were very afraid and very financially constrained about going abroad. And so these opportunities to connect that COIL, that Global Classroom give, were eye-opening for them and made them, in many cases, less afraid to take that step to collaborate. And I think for faculty as well, who had maybe not stepped beyond their borders or not thought about the opportunities that existed beyond their borders, it was an ability to see that there were opportunities to connect that way. So that we are much more aware now of the ways in which we could connect. And I think probably for the United States, and this is something that we're going to grapple with at UC San Diego, at least a little bit, or at least I hope a little bit, is a recognition of where the US sits when we start thinking about how collaboration works. And at this moment in time, I think for US faculty, for US students, there's a deeper recognition of the need to be international, to be global, to think about how things work across borders, because you can't assume that it's just going to be the way the US does it. I think there really is a recognition that this kind of thinking is necessary in the academy in particular.
Yes, completely agree with you, because as I mentioned before, we started in 2018 and the situation in the world was completely different 7 years ago. And a lot of things have happened. And it's very interesting for us how this model has the capacity to adapt, but also the benefit of allowing us to adapt. So it's a two-way. It's a two ways. And that is very important for anybody that is thinking on starting or is still hesitating about should I try it or not. This is a very interesting model because it's very easy to adapt as we did, but it also helped us to adapt because we started when there was not really the usual problems in the world. And all of a sudden, we were running 10 pilots when all of a sudden we have COVID and we have this mandate from our president saying, and guess what? This is going to be the only format for internationalization. You need to offer 10 times that.
Everybody.
Yes, and we proved that it's possible to escalate in that way, doing some changes and preparing our staff for certain things, and also basing or having the support of our faculty and the skills they also learned during the pandemic, during the COVID, because we all had to be online. So that helped a lot, and I'm very confident and I'm very aware that that moment in history made a huge change for us at Tech in how this model succeeded. The problem was when COVID ended or when everything went back. Well, The world was not the same. It had already started to change. And we were not the same because we have tried already this new format and we wouldn't let it go just as easily. So it's been a real pleasure to continue and watching all the professors and the students wanting to participate. But talking about the international scene, I believe this is more, it is needed more than ever because not only of the way we can talk, but the reflections you see in the students once they've had that experience. How a lot of stereotypes, how a lot of fake news, how a lot of misunderstandings, historic misunderstanding and new misunderstandings just fall apart because they cannot stand when the students and the professors with a very intentional and well-designed type of collaboration reflect on what it means for each other and what it means for the two or the three or the many groups that are there discussing, thinking, reflecting on the exercise that the professors design. So I think that for anyone that is still hesitating on the option of including something like global learning, trying some form of COIL, I would say go ahead and do it. Because once you see the results, it's very difficult that you will let it go. It might not have the impetus that it has in some universities. At Tech, we are very intense. So I know that we all do things always in the high volume, but it only has to start with a few ones. And that's the way we started. Now you see our statistics, and of course they are very impacting. But we started with 3, 4 groups, and then we moved to 10, and then we have to jump to the hundreds. But nevertheless, it is something that is really, you can administrate that, you can manage that. You only need that the team and the faculty and the students are enthusiastic about it. So now that you are in UC San Diego, and you already told us a little bit about the challenges that you and your team will face to start this journey in global learning, where do you see UC San Diego in, let's say, 3-5 years on this matter?
So I'm going to apologize in advance because a garbage truck just pulled up outside, so make it very noisy for a minute. So I have a couple of hopes. You actually talked about two things that I think I'm thinking about very hard as we put things together at UC San Diego. One of them is intentionality, that we want to be able to do this first by looking at what's already happening on campus. Where are things that we would consider global learning happening on campus? How is it already being defined? When I came to UC San Diego, we realized there was a global learning minor, but there's no definition of global learning. So everybody was sort of, each department was making its own definition. Like, I won't discard those, but now we need to find a common root. What is it that these things have in common? How are they doing it intentionally? What are they thinking about when they say somebody has experience with global learning? And the other thing that you talked about that I think is really important, and I think if you are my age and trained traditionally, you don't necessarily think about. I think a younger generation thinks about it much more actively, is how do you get the students to reflect not necessarily on what they've read or the dates they've been made to memorize or the actual chemical compounds they've been made to memorize, but how do you get them to reflect on how they've learned and what that means in their relationship to the world? And I think that's one of the things that global learning does very, very well, is it allows for students to think about what their relationship is to the world around them. And that's the local world, that's the regional world, that's your international world. What does that mean? And when we started working with tech on our Global Classrooms project, one of the pieces that we inserted into the work we were doing together were the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this was intentional because what it gave to the faculty that were collaborating was a framework to think about how they could collaborate on topics that were meaningful to the both of them and would be meaningful to their students. So it doesn't have to be the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but there are a number of global frameworks that faculty can utilize in coming together. What are those frameworks? Where is that intentionality going to be that will allow them to collaborate? And I think this is one of the things that we're going to be thinking about very carefully at San Diego as we start to put together a collective definition, is what are we already doing? What kinds of frameworks do we want to use to think about what global learning means to the campus? And how do we want people to think about how they collaborate in terms of moving the institution forward and raising the global awareness of our students and the global engagement of our students?
I think it's incredible that having this chance to start something new, it brings a whole new canvas to draw even more beautiful painting that you did before. But nevertheless, there are some lessons that you've learned. And as a leader, you always have kind of a certain set of things that you want as outputs. So in this case, of course, you will ask the faculty at UC San Diego, and you will allow the space for them to create their own definition and to create their own paths. But in your experience, what are some effective ways for faculty to integrate this global perspective into their courses?
So I think a couple of ways. I think first off, I'm going to let faculty do somewhat their own thing, but I'm hoping to come up with a collective definition that everybody will refer back to. I have actually been very lucky at UC San Diego. Our executive vice chancellor and provost, Elizabeth Simmons, has an initiative called Collective Impact, where she is bringing together faculty and staff to think about ways to serve our students better. And doing it by looking at how can we collaborate between units better, how can we streamline services better for faculty, how do you put together courses that make sure that students can engage in an equitable fashion within their courses. And I have been engaged with our experiential learning collective impact group. And one of the first things we did was think about a definition across campus. What is experiential learning? What is this going to mean to people across campus? So I have a platform now for once I step into, we need a definition for global learning as well. How did we get to that in experiential learning? And using that as a model for how we'll do it for global learning itself. And then I think for the individual faculty member, I think you need a couple of things. One is you need that definition. You need the faculty to know, what are we trying to get you to do? You need something for them to go back to. And then you ideally want them to think about, what are the outcomes for my students? And how does this definition of global learning work with my outcomes? And you start with the outcomes. What do you want the students to be able to do when they leave your class? And you work backward from that. What is that going to entail? What do I need to do? Do I need to add readings and discussion? Do I need a particular project? Am I going to collaborate to get to that point with my project? What is it that needs to happen so that this outcome, this student learning outcome, fits with our definition of global learning, so that when students leave my course, I'll be able to say they have engaged in global learning. So that intentionality in their classes is going to be really important.
You just mentioned something that it made me think of a term in an area where I must admit that at Tech haven't made great advancement, and it's a pending issue in my head all the time. And this is because, as I mentioned, we didn't have the full model thought before we started. This has been something that is in a practicum, then we reflect on what we did, we hear about our partners and how they felt the experience, we then kind of modify and adjust the things that need to be adjusted and try it again. So it's been a really experiential type of work. But in the academic world, assessment is always needed and an issue. So have you thought of any ways of assessing the outcomes and the impact? Because if you have any idea, we still have like months to talk.
I think it's almost a little bit too soon for me to think about that for San Diego. We're not far enough along to think about how we would assess what we're doing, because we're not yet doing it. I know what we need to do to get to the point of being able to say, okay, we now have acknowledged global learning is happening on this campus in more ways. I mean, I say that's probably the wrong way to say it. Global learning is happening on the campus, but it's happening in pieces. So we know kids are doing study abroad. We know we have a couple of people on the campus who've now been trained to do COIL style learning from a number of different places. So they're all going to be doing their version of COIL. And we know there's a couple of other pockets where people are using the UN SDGs to work with classes and students. So we know that global learning is happening, but until we can bring it together and really, again, sort of move backward, can we distill what the key components of this are? It's a little bit harder to say exactly how we would assess it. I think one of the things that we're going to try and do is look at student reflection, which to me is one of the most important aspects of global learning, is to have the students reflect on what they've learned through this. So we'll look at faculty reflection in these classes and try to pull out meaning from those reflections. And I think the final thing that we'll probably end up taking a look at is faculty reflection. And perhaps this is a little bit complicated at San Diego because of the way courses are approved, but we may try and take a look at either the structure of assessment, the structure of the in-class assessments, or the ways in which they write student learning outcomes. That last is hard because there's a whole process for getting a course approved, and the outcomes are tied to the approval of the course. So, and we ran into that at Davis with faculty looking at how they could do something without it having to go through an entire new course approval process. So there are things in my head that I think will be able to tell us how it's working. But until we can actually put some things into place that holistically look at the institution, it's going to be a little bit hard to put the assessment into place.
Okay, count us in, because that is a pending task that we have at Tech, and I'm sure that we can learn a lot together, because regardless yes.
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm very lucky at UC San Diego. Our unit is based in student affairs and campus life, and the assessment team for student affairs and campus life has built an entire set of templates for program assessment. So I now have a template So I'm going through and thinking about what do I want this template to do for the different programs that I run. So I'm very excited about that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it will be really interesting. This is a whole topic that you and I and my team should talk about, because that's the pending task in our model. And still, I mean, we know by the happiness and the joy that everybody participates, we know that there is added value. People wouldn't come to do this unless they found that it is good for them. But still, it's not the same like to have it in black and white and have all the resources to show the real value for other audiences, not only internally.
Mm-hmm.
So assessment is on my list, and I will be bothering you, knocking at your door to see how are you doing this. Please let us know how you're doing this. And another key element on all this model are partners, and we haven't talked that much about it. We've been partnering in the case of UC Davis, and I hope that we will be partnering now that you start in UC San Diego. We have many things in common, but being partners, key actors on this model, how or what do you consider should be like key feature for in a partner?
So that actually is a really interesting question, because I think it actually depends. For something like Global Classroom or COIL, I really think you need faculty to find a partner with whom they're comfortable. Mm-hmm. That, because I think for them, it becomes not just about the actual course that they're teaching, but if it is, if the faculty themselves have seen themselves coming together for whatever reason, they're much more likely to build out other kinds of relationships. So research relationships, which at an R1 institution like UC San Diego is extremely important. A teaching relationship is good, but that research relationship is going to be what carries our faculty through to tenure. So they need those research relationships. For global learning in general, I actually think being able to identify who your strongest partners are. Where do you have the most in common? Where are the large numbers of your faculty collaborating already? Are there places that your students are particularly interested in where you'd like to build out those collaborations? I think that's what you need to be looking at. And you actually bring us to another piece of what it is that will be doing at UC San Diego, which is building those data sets by looking at where is our strength in collaboration? Who is it that people are looking to be able to say, okay, we have real strength here. That strength is partially teaching, partially research. Where can we build it out to make it stronger? And so your international office would help there by being able to say, here's some strength. Here's places we're going to give an extra nudge or an extra bit of support to, because we know ultimately it will build not a one-to-one faculty-to-faculty relationship, but an institutional relationship that can last beyond the individual faculty member. Having said that, those relationships often begin with individual faculty relationships.
Yes, they do.
So it really sort of slides back and forth between the two.
Yeah. They work more or less like a sandwich. It has to start on the bottom, but it also has to start on the top. And then somehow they have to find each other and meet in the middle to make it last longer.
That's a really good analogy.
Oh, thank you. And you guess what? We have some questions from the audience. So I'm going to read this one from Georgina Gutierrez. And it's a very interesting one because that's another topic that we should cover here. We are educating students for careers and jobs that are evolving. From your experience, what skills or mindsets do students gain through global learning that are the most valuable?
So I think there's a couple of things that are really important that students can gain through global learning. One of them is collaboration. Global learning is almost always predicated on some kind of action or collaboration. And students learning how to do this, they often don't want to, but learning how to do this in almost any job that they go into, it's going to be important. And I think diversity of perspective, learning and being able to address respectfully the ways in which people coming to the table might have a different perspective than you, and the importance of being able to engage with those perspectives well, to be able to think, what does that bring to the table? How does that affect what it is that I'm doing? I think Global Classroom, COIL in particular, are really good at those two things. I think global learning in general works very well at that. And the final thing that I would say that's related to this idea of perspective taking is also an awareness of the world around you. And in almost all the jobs that we can see going forward into the future, I think there really is a need to be able to see beyond what it is that you grew up with. And it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter in that sense how privileged a background you come from. You need to be able to look beyond that, to be able to recognize the different possibilities of where the world might go. And again, I think global learning is really important in being able to do those things. So when we're looking at the future of work, when we're looking at students being able to move flexibly in different directions as work changes, as needs change, those abilities to being able to look beyond what you grew up with, to be able to think about the diversity of perspectives at the table, and to be able to act collaboratively, those are all going to be really important going forward. So it's less I know how to code than it is the ability to be able to think broadly. I think probably would be a good term to put to it. I hope that answers at least a piece of their question.
It is. I mean, because there are so many things that the students could learn, so many skills they can develop. This is a very personal experience. So in that sense, I believe that the groups in general, one of the things that I've noticed when I talk to the students is that they develop a greater sense of empathy. And as you mentioned, you might be from a very privileged background and have all the resources, and you never thought of anybody that wouldn't have them, because that's the reality that you know. It's not your fault. That's the way you've lived, and that it is. Now, this experience will put you in front of maybe an even better privilege or a farther privileged group, or on the contrary, it will put you into contact of people that are doing great things, but when you see what they have in hand, it's really impressive. And it makes you think on how you have to work in order to develop this empathy and learn that people have many ways of succeeding. And the other thing that I'm really impressed and I like in general about internationalization, but also in terms of group working collaboratively in this global learning model, is self-awareness. All the things that I didn't know about myself. Because it's like putting yourself into a mirror that you thought you had this, but then you notice that you have this because you're Mexicans and all Mexicans have it. And you were not aware that other people don't have it. So it is a very interesting process. Out of that, these two things, these two elements.
I think
for the life, not only for the work, not only for the new jobs or the job market, but to improve as a person. And in that is where I put my hopes of creating a better society. Having
I think the reflective element.
Exactly, yes. Having these generations that will know and recognize what they are and what the others are, and understanding that it is correct. And that is what makes these societies and this world so rich and so wonderful.
Yeah.
So it might be a very romantic view, but that's why I'm a teacher, no? That's why I love to be in front of a classroom and talk to students and do things that will put them into these places where they can learn more about themselves and then being able to create a better society for all. So
I think that brings us back to sort of earlier thoughts of what education was about. I think the idea of pursuing truth, people talk about that as well, but the idea of self-reflection to get to that is really, really important. And teaching the students how to be self-reflective is going to be key going forward.
it is going to be key. So yes, thank you so much. We have another one from Carla Bravo. And Carla, this is a very interesting question, and I'm going to read it, but I'm going to give a very fast response, and then we hear Liz. How can I start a global learning or COIL project if my institution does not provide a formal funding or infrastructure? Well, I will tell you, we are very privileged at Tech because just by chance, it happens that we had a team, and later on, as I mentioned, COVID came, and then our president and our rector really had this view of what they wanted, and they put some resources on it. Could have we done it without those resources? I think yes. Would it be in a not as large volume as we do now? Of course. But the very interesting thing about global learning code projects is that they require very few resources, or the resources that you already have. We use a lot of free tools that are online that we learn about them during the pandemic, and we still keep using them. And there are excellent tools. And well, you just need a connection like this. I think that the greater investment here is your time. That is really what you have to put forward, is find some time. And this is different on each institution. Some institutions will cover the cost of that time, some others won't. But if you really want to enrich the experience of your students in your class, and you can invest a little bit of more time in that class, you can very easily include a form of COIL in that class and give your students this international experience. And if you don't have partners, drop us a note and we'll see how we can help you. Liz, what do you think?
So I'm going to agree with you on a lot of this. I think I said at the beginning, my initial institution where I did COIL work, our IT people said, absolutely not. We're not going to help you at all.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. My partner, I was in Greece, so my partner institution was in the US, and that partner institution helped me with some of the actual communication hardware we needed. Again, this is pre-Zoom. It was pre-doing anything like this. So those initial classes we connected through our course management platform via Skype and via telephone. We had all three going at the same time. So life is different now in terms of some of those resources. What I would tell you for me in looking at a little bit what we did at Davis, but also probably how this is going to end up working at San Diego. Find your faculty. Find your faculty who are interested in a new way of teaching, a new way of collaborating. You'll always find a few. There may only be a few at first, and use them to help build that interest. And think together with them about what kinds of minimal support they would need to be able to do that work together. And one of the things that we're then hoping to build at UC San Diego is a faculty peer learning circle, may be the wrong way of putting it, but a faculty peer group that can talk to one another about their experiences and help one another troubleshoot. because University of California is entering into what's going to end up being a budget crunch. So we're looking at how can we do this where resources are going to be minimal. I'm used to working in a minimalist environment that way. So it really is looking for who would be excited to be your champions, and how do you build on those experiences with your champions. And then I think the final thing to look at is, if you find those champions, are there small things that you can give them that would help them feel like they're being acknowledged? Is it an acknowledgement at the end of the year? And I know Tech does this with their faculty, or have done this in the past with their faculty, is acknowledged those that have been doing it for a long period of time. Is there small amounts of money for conference going, virtual conference going? And Global Classroom, COIL, they're really, really good at doing things like this. So the International Virtual Exchange Conference, IVEC, is a really good way of doing this. And so those are often a lot less expensive than going in person. IFE would be another one, where the ability to be able to connect virtually, even if there's not a lot of money for in person. The whole point behind global learning via COIL or Global Classroom is that you can do this virtually. So taking advantage of those opportunities can also be really good for both staff and faculty, because as they participate this way in that kind of learning, it allows them to then take it back to their students and demonstrate the worth of what it is that they're doing. So exploring those kinds of opportunities and finding those champions, that would be how I would go forward.
Oh, this has been so great, Liz. As always, talking to you is so enlightening. I have a whole list of things that I want to continue discussing with you, because it will be very enriching for us and will help us a lot to move forward. And also some proposals to start working closer to UC San Diego. So you know that this is not going to be the last one that we talk about, but we'll continue talking. But for today, sadly, we have to say goodbye to our audience. Have a final message from your side if you want, and then I will give some announcements.
I just want to say thank you so much for including me in the conversation. I hope that what we've said has been useful to people moving forward, and I look forward to continued collaboration with Tech, because I love you guys.
Thank you so much, Liz. And yes, as Liz mentioned, this is not over. This is a work in progress, and it will be moving along with the changes that we suffer or we experience in our society. So keep a close contact to any partner that offers you or that you see suitable to start collaborating. In our case, we are participating at the IFE conference with a special program, and Global Learning is a whole group of conferences dedicated precisely for the understanding of how tech does it, but also to share best practices among the participating people. So keep a close eye on this. Thank you very much. We will once again invite you all to the IFE conference in 2026. This event offers 3 days of educational innovation through keynote conferences, panels, hybrid events, special events, award ceremonies, which are very interesting, the call for proposal presentations and networking spaces, and much more. And this much more, I want to add, one of the things that I really love the most about this conference is that it has a lot of opportunities of hands-on. So it's not that you only go and hear what others have done, but also Tec de Monterrey opens a lot of, maybe all, I will say, all the labs and workshops that we have for our own faculty. So our people, our technical people, our advisors, they are all there to talk to you and to show you how we do it. So maybe you can get some ideas there to bring to your universities too. The IFE conferences will take place again from January 27 to the 29 at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Monterrey campus. And you can visit the website ifeconference.tec.mx, or reach us through email and ifeconference@servicios.tec.mx. You will find all this in the different information that we have in our websites. So again, thanking all the team that makes it possible. My team, Giselle Morales, which has been with us here during the whole presentation. On behalf of the Institute for the Future of Education of Tecnológico de Monterrey, we thank you all for your participation and look forward to seeing you in the next session of IFE Conference Talks, where we will present the topic, Empowering Innovation, Strategies for Designing Digital Experiences. The session will be on Spanish, and it will take place on Wednesday, September 24 at 4 p.m. Mexico Central Time. Thank you again for joining us today. We'd also like to thank all the technical team, as I mentioned, who supported us with this logistics for the session. Have everyone a great day. Thank you so much.